Hi guys, it's Namaki. Welcome back to my second Mermaid speed paint for Mermay. If you didn't see the first one, basically what I'm trying to do is, instead of drawing a mermaid every day, because I don't really have the time, despite being in quarantine, I was going to do a mermaid for each week of Mermay, so therefore 4 mermaids, each after a different season. So this is going to be my summer mermaid. When I first decided I wanted to do seasonal mermaids, this wasn't the first one I got to. The first one I thought of was the autumn one, which I'm really looking forward to drawing. But I went to summer, and the first 2 things I thought of were a sun setting over the beach, which, a bit ironic because in summer, particularly in my country, you tend not to see the sunset because midsummer the sun doesn't set till like 11 PM and I'm usually in bed. But yeah, I thought of a sunset setting over the beach, and I want to use that as my colour scheme, so pale blue, pastel blues and pinks and oranges and yellows. The other thing I thought of is I'm quite into The Sims 4, and I watch a YouTuber called Clashvon, and she has a sim named Summer, and so that's where kind of basically it was mostly just the hairstyle that came from that, but she's a blonde sim, she's got a plait over the top of her head, and she often wears baby blue colours, and that's kind of where a lot of this, a lot of the kind of concept of what I wanted my mermaid to look like came from. Now, she evolved well past that point quite a while ago, but that's where I was going with that. Because I had these 2 main concepts in mind of what I wanted my mermaid to look like, I think this one went a lot better than the spring mermaid, who I didn't really know what I was doing. I chose a dodgy pose, not a great colour palette, and it was a bit of a mess. But it's still online, and if I get rid of it, it'll make no sense, because then we'll have, 3 seasonal mermaids and no spring mermaid, and that doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I think overall, this one ended up looking more relaxed, as in the pose looked more fluid than the last one, because I chose a less stupid pose. I also think for some reason this mermaid looks so much younger than the last one. I think it's something to do with the proportions of like her body that I drew, but I don't really mind it. It wasn't intentional, but I think she looks more individual than the last one, so that's always a good thing. As I was drawing her, and I did the little plait on top of her head, when I was trying to connect up the segments of the plait, for some reason it ended up looking a bit like, you'll see in a moment, but a bit like those little shells you find on the beach that kind of look the same sort of shape as coffee beans with the little teeth. And so it was originally going to be a plait, and then it became a headdress, and I was kind of just like, you know what? That works. Why not? Yeah, no, I've been meaning to draw this for ages. I just kind of, well, I say ages, I mean like the last week, and it's Sunday now, so we're running a bit late, but and I just kind of ran out of motivation to draw mermaids, and I don't know why. And then earlier today I was watching Drawing with Waffles turn fruits into mermaids, which I thought was awesome, and that kind of got me back into the swing of it, so that's good at least. So we now have a mermaid, which is always a good start. I'm rambling, this isn't good. The next bit, I've got like a rough script. I always roughly script these things, otherwise I run out of stuff to say and end up saying a lot, and well, here we are. But the next bit of my script was, on the shells on her head, which we haven't even got to yet. And then after that I was going to talk about like my selection tool, but we're not even close to that yet. I'm just doing line art. I think it's interesting actually over the last like few weeks just in quarantine how my line art's evolved, I suppose, because I used to always go through with the like line thickness adjuster and like make all the lines thicker in the middle. Well, not always thicker in the middle, but thicker at joints, and change the line width, and I haven't been doing that as often, but I almost like it better. I'm not sure why. I might go back to doing it the other way. Maybe I'll, get some insight by comparing the 2. I haven't done that in ages, which is really weird, now that I think about it. I'm trying to change up my colouring style as well, because you can probably tell I'm not brilliant at colouring and shading and stuff, but I've been trying to get used to shading more, just using one colour over the entire piece and sticking it in overlay, finding colour that makes it look like everything's shaded without having to pick lots of different colours, because obviously for working on my comic, I can't spend that long colouring everything, because I've been working on it for like 2 weeks now, and I've done half the colouring for one group of panels, so I think it's about 4 or 5 panels, but it's like the first page out of 6 of the first episode, and I'm still not done after 2 weeks on that much, which is really not good. But, you know, oh well. I was trying to, as you can see here, split up hair more, because I used to just draw hair as one big blob, but obviously because I don't know how to shade it that well, it kind of looks dodgy, whereas at least if I split it up, you can tell it's hair more. I need a lot of practice on these things. I'm thinking of doing some referencing off other artists, seeing how they shade and colour stuff, and trying to imitate a couple styles and see what works best. It'll probably be whichever one's easiest works best. I'm a bit of a lazy artist. If I spend more than a couple of hours on something, I start to get really bored, and colouring is not one of the things that I greatly enjoy. I don't mind line arting and sketching, that's kind of fun, but I kind of get to the colouring point and I'm just like, do I really need to bother with this? Do I? So we're about to get to the bit where I try and use my selection tool, and I usually like to have a base to put all my colours on top so that I can clip a folder to it to make sure I don't draw outside the lines, and usually I will select the outside of my drawing. I'll just select the whole outside, and then you invert it and I expand it by 1 pixel to make sure that I've covered all the corners, and then I fill it in. And it's nice and simple, easy, gets me a nice base, and then I can put my folder on top. But for some reason when I was drawing this, my selection tool wasn't working. I kept tapping it and it wasn't doing anything, and it was a real pain. As you can see me here, instead deciding to outline the entire thing in paint, so that I can then fill it in. Problem with that was, I got to the end of it, and my fill tool wasn't working either. I'm not sure why they weren't working. Eventually I closed it down, I restarted my entire laptop, and they were fine again. And so obviously it was chill, but it was a bit of a pain, I'm gonna be honest, because I had to, obviously as you can see, go around every single bit of my drawing, and it took hours. So yeah, that was fun. Here was when I put my colour palette down at the side like I did with the last one. And obviously this colour palette was much more cohesive, but I was also very proud of it because they were all very pastel colours, and I was trying for ages to work out like what I could do to offset them, because obviously if I had a pale skinned mermaid, and for some reason in my head mermaids are always quite pale skin. I think it's just because like I imagine you don't get a lot of sun at the bottom of the ocean, so I always imagine my mermaid's quite pale. But which is it's probably not good of me. I should appreciate mermaid diversity more. And actually I like doing the mermaid skins in like pale blues and greens. But this time I was like, right, so that's not going to work, because obviously I need it to tie in with the rest of the colour scheme, and I need to create some contrast. So I kind of I went for a warm toned, quite dark skin tone, and I think it actually came out quite well. I'm never really sure how to shade those kinds of skin tones, and I was saying earlier that my shading is trash, but just this once I think it went quite well, and I'm really proud of how this turned out. Obviously I did have a couple issues when it came to colouring my mermaid, resulting from earlier when I outlined everything in blue, because I chose to outline everything in pale colour, which I always do because I think it's easier to see your colours sat on top of them if you outline everything pale. But it means that I can't tell the difference between that colour and the background, and so there were lots of gaps between the line art and the edge of the colour that I had to keep going back and filling in and editing, which was a bit problematic, but oh well. The other thing I did on this is, there are two different ways to draw mermaid tails, aren't there? The mermaid tail just merges into the body, or the mermaid tail has like the little, almost like a little rubber ring, like aerial mermaid tails, that have like a little adjoining bit. Now, when I was younger, I loved The Little Mermaid. It was one of my But it still is one of my favourite Disney films in terms of nostalgia, because I loved it when I was little. I used to watch it all the time, and I always wanted to be a mermaid. Back before I was obsessed with dragons, I was very much obsessed with mermaids. I've got a thing for mythical creatures, for some bizarre reason. They're awesome though, but I always used to be very much more of an Ariel tail type person. But these days I found I actually prefer doing the mergy ones so much more, because I think you can do a lot more with making the face and the body of the mermaid look more interesting. Going back to Sims 4, which, I mean, I should stop talking about because it's art videos, not Sims videos, and I don't tend to make Sims videos because obviously I'm bad at talking over stuff and they would be trash. But no, I found that in that the mermaids in Island Living, which I don't have, but the mermaids in that game always have the tails that kind of just join on, and then you can do loads to your mermaid's body by putting scales on different parts of the body. And I think I like the idea of my underwater creatures having scales in lots of different points, and I also like using scales to make freckles because I just think it's really, really cute. What you can see here is I was a bit of a dilemma because I wanted to have the sunset fading from, you know, like orange and pink and orange and yellow at some point, and I thought it'd be really cool to do ombre hair, which is what I eventually went with. But at the same time, I kind of figured if I go for ombre hair, then what colour do I make the tail? Do I make it all pink? Do I make it all yellow? Do I make it all orange? Do I make it blue like the top? But I thought that would be a bit too much, and then the illustration wouldn't look very balanced. And so in the end, I sort of went for both. Which sounds bad, but I think it looked okay. It made her look kind of glowy in that I did ombre hair from orange through to yellow through to pink, and then I did a pink tail, but with orange to yellow ombre fins. So I figured that was a good compromise, but I'm not sure now. You'll see later when I put the background in that I'm just not good at pitting colours against each other. I have so much to learn. Like, so much to learn in the arting world, it would seem. But, oh well, I'm getting there. The other thing I did different with this mermaid versus my spring mermaid was when it came to shading the tail. On my spring mermaid, I made a pattern that went across the entire illustration of little scales, just by, you know, drawing a couple, then copying and pasting them, filling the area, and I put them over the tail on an overlay layer so that it would give the scale pattern on top of whatever shading I did. In this particular drawing, whilst I used overlay shading, like I was talking about earlier, for lots of things like the shell and the fins and the hair, because they were all ombre, and it's like it's too much effort to change my shading colour, and it's difficult to blend it well and still keep the harder edges. But for this one instead, when I was shading the tail, I decided to just use the colour I was shading with, and use kind of like tapping motions on my screen to give it the scaly effect without having to just put scales on top, so they're a bit more random. They don't fill the entire tail, although I did use a light colour to do some light ones in the areas that would have shine on them. And although they don't cover the entire thing, they're a bit more random and misshapen. I think it almost looks better, because it kind of looks more natural, like something you actually find in nature. Whereas when I tried to do the overlay method, like, I should have spent time shading those scales to make them look like they're actually on top of each other, but instead it just kind of looked like boxes on a tail, which just wasn't as good, really. But something about this mermaid is very glowy. I think it's partly the blush colour I used, and partly just the contrast between, like, skin and the ombre hair, I think, does it. Particularly given that it's lightest in the middle, because I've kind of got pink at one end and the orange at the other, which might not have been the smartest choice, but I think it looks alright, actually. But yeah, so there's my scales that I was doing. But I'm really proud of them. I think they look really good, and you can't take that away from me. And if I ever get around to drawing a dragon, I'm gonna use those. I need to draw more dragons. I just haven't, like, had the time. I say had the time. I'm getting to the point where I'm not bad at drawing people. You can obviously tell I'm not brilliant, but I'm not bad at drawing people and faces, whereas animals are right. Whole different layer of weirdness, because obviously I'd have to learn a whole new style, because I've tried drawing rabbits in my style. I have some rabbits, I love them, but I find it quite difficult, because obviously in a cartoony style you kind of want everything to have human-y features, and so the eyes go on the front, but rabbits don't have eyes on the front of their head, they have eyes on the side of their head, and so do dragons, which I always find, which looks right, but I always find kind of strange, because animals are supposed to have eyes on the sides of their head if they're prey, and they have eyes on the front of their head if they're predators. And I 90% sure dragons count as predators, given the whole breathing fire, giant talons, terrorizing villagers thing, and they always have the eyes on the side, but it looks cool. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, to learn to do dragons, it would take a lot of studying, and obviously dragons will look different, and so there's no one simple base for them, and yet there's stuff that looks wrong and stuff that looks right. And so I'm kind of scared it would take me a lot of time if I actually went to try learn to do dragons properly. But I do want to, because I love dragons, and my comic creatures all have kind of dragony features, and I might put a dragon in that story one day, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of open ends about the world in that, so I could stick some dragons in it. I might do that. The other thing that went better with this one was the highlights. I'm not sure why. I think I just overdid it with the highlights in the other one, and I think I tried to put the highlights on top of the line art, because I wanted the line art to be lighter if the area was lighter. And I just don't think that works, particularly not when the line art's very thin, because obviously the highlight kept coming over the edge, and it just looks sort of dodgy, whereas I think in this I've got the idea of the shine is just better on her. I think the back of the hair needed a bit more shade on it, but overall I think this one went alright. You can see me colouring my line art right now, because the other thing is when you colour your line art, I mean, it's basically invisible anyway, so it doesn't really matter if it's not the right colour to match the shading, the highlighting, I feel, because it just doesn't, because the highlight stands out more than the line, basically. And so if you spend all that time, you know, trying to make the line art match the lighting, it just doesn't. Point is, it didn't go well. I'm sure there's a way to do it very well and, you know, effectively and all that, and it'll look beautiful, but I am not that skilled, and so that is not going to happen. The only thing left for me to do on the drawing at the minute, I'm just finishing the line art, I think, at this point, was the background. Now, I must admit, the background on this did not go brilliantly, because I'd seen someone else on Instagram, and I can't remember who it was, which is really, really bad of me, who'd done their mermaids with backgrounds that were just kind of like a bit of a splash of colour in the background, and the edges would just be white as if they were on, so not as if they were in their environment. And last time I thought I'd made the mistake of, I tried to make it look like the actual ocean and then scrapped it all and just gone for a plain blue background with a bit of light. And so I tried to do something a bit more like that this time. The only thing was that it wasn't really, my character kind of felt like she was blending back into the background again, and so I tried to fix that, and it didn't really work, and I feel like the background kind of distracts from all that highlighting I'd done, which had gone so well, but there wasn't anything I could do about it at this point, so oh well. This is the end of the video, so I'd like to say thank you for watching, and check out my other videos, check out my other mermaid, although obviously it's not that great, and go check my Instagram, subscribe. Thanks for watching.